Update. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again. We are at meeting 4. Next time we will have actually crossed the midpoint. Thanks again to the audience for being here and offering us your questions and suggestions. And a reminder, we have comment forms at the back of the room for folks to submit questions and ideas to the task force. And there is a public hearing next Tuesday night, 7 to 9 p.m. in this room for all members of the public to come and offer your suggestions and ideas for the consideration of the task force. To the task force and the sport team, thank you to all of you for being here again and hanging in there with us. Keep at it. We have a lot of really good ideas on the table so far, and I want to start our introductions today by introducing the 2 new support team members today, and I'm going to ask them to say a few words. Ashley Lummers-Johnson, the Executive Director of the Everett Housing Authority, and Everett Fire Chief Murray Gordon. So I'm going to ask Ashley if he would like to just say a couple words to introduce himself and why the Housing Authority is so interested in this subject.
Hi, I'm Ashley Lummers-Johnson. I have been the Executive Director of the Everett Housing Authority for about 21 months now. We're undergoing a lot of change and doing a lot of work and a lot of good work. And I appreciate the opportunity to participate today. I'll talk more later.
Thanks, Ashley. Chief Court.
Hi, my name's Murray Gordon. I'm from Everett. I call that my hometown, although I happen to be born in California just because of parents' travel. But I've grown up in Everett, attended Everett schools, and was fortunate to be hired by the Everett Fire Department 38 years ago. I've been chief of the department for almost 14 years. And between myself and Assistant Chief Bob Downey, we're pleased to be able to participate and contribute to this initiative.
Thank you. I really appreciate both of you reaching out to us and asking to be on the support team. I think it's great to have your input at the table here, so thank you for that. So I'd like to go around the table with quick introductions of your name and the agency you are with, if any, and whether you're a task force member or part of the staff support team. I'm Karen Reed. I am the facilitator.
I'm David Hall, the Deputy City Attorney, City of Everett.
Dan Templeman, Police Chief, and staff support.
Ty Trineri, Snohomish County Sheriff.
Chris Knapp with the Everett Clinic.
Joyce Stewart with the Everett Public Schools.
Jonathan Upon with the Salvation Army.
Georgia D. McLeod, Council of Neighborhoods.
Mark Niceother, CDOG Corporation. Bob Reese, Volunteers of America.
Bob Dobler, Gamut 360 Holdings.
Renee Quistorf, Renee's.
Craig Scottdahl with the Downtown Everett Association and Scottdahl Real Estate.
Flora Diaz, I'm an associate attorney at Olone Law Group.
Tina Ellison, Everett Housing Authority and the Human Needs Committee for the City of Everett.
Sophia Beltran with Lutheran Community Services Northwest.
Mary Jane Brelvevich with Snohomish County, sitting in for Ken Stark.
Nancy Cole with Compass Health, sitting in for Tom Sebastian.
Glenn Bachman, I'm General Manager, Everett Mall, and I'm also Port Commissioner for the City of Everett.
Matthew, I think it's to you.
Matthew Savage, Journey Church.
Alan Dorway, First Presbyterian Church of Everett.
Cassie Franklin, Cocoon House. Karen Matson, Housing Hope, filling in for Ed Peterson.
Sylvia Anderson, Everett Gospel Mission, and co-chair.
And our other co-chair, Chris, is going to be coming in a little late today. So thank you for that. Thanks for leaning into the mic so we get a good recording when you need to speak. And if you want me to call on you, remember to flip your table card up like that, and I will do so. Okay, today's agenda. We don't have any information responses for you today, but we will get back to you on what we can at the next meeting. I want to make a couple comments about the tours. Who has actually been able to go on a tour yet so far? Who has signed up for a tour but hasn't had to go yet, hasn't been able to go yet? Okay, who hasn't signed up for a tour at all?
Make us raise our hand.
Yeah. If you have not signed up for a tour, please be sure you do so. There are still 4 tours happening. we want to try to have people go to places where they are least familiar. And if there is a big, so the jail tour, we're still looking for a date. I believe we're aiming at September 10th in the afternoon, if that works for the jail. I'm getting the nod from Ty. So Wendy, maybe make a note of that then. The September 10 date for the jail tour is a thumbs up from the sheriff. So, and we had, that one had to be canceled, but it's being rescheduled. There's space available on that tour if you are interested. The city tour, thanks to Craig and Renee and other folks, I've heard that city tour was fabulous and really informative. And Craig has said he's willing to try to reassemble that group if there is critical mass of interest from service providers who were unable to go to the initial one. The Compass Health Tour had to be canceled because they had some vandalism at their facilities, unfortunately, but they are going to reschedule that for a date later this month. We don't have that, but if you are interested in touring the Compass Health facilities, there's still the sign-up sheet at the back of the room for that. Everett Gospel Mission tour has yet to happen. There's room available at that, and there are still 2 spaces available if you are interested in watching the focus group of homeless individuals that Sylvia is going to be sponsoring at the mission. So again, Wendy has sign-up sheets at the back table there for each and every one of those, and at the next meeting, we're going to be talking about what folks thought about the tours that you went on, and again, the hope is that every one of you gets to go on one of these tours, so thank you for putting in that extra time commitment. Today, the agenda, 2 major panels. First on temporary and emergency housing and services. The second on permanent housing and supportive services for those in permanent housing. The goal of the panels today is obviously not to solve these problems, but to understand better the realities of what's happening here in the community, and to get the facts and ideas from you and from the service providers and others about ways things might be done differently, maybe done better. Get your questions out on the table, and then we will have some working groups go off and try to consider your ideas in more depth. So you'll see on the agenda today an action item following the first panel. You might remember at the last meeting we created a subcommittee to bring back some ideas for you around criminal justice solutions and alternatives. And we did the same thing around outreach, and we're going to try to merge that outreach group with a subcommittee on temporary crisis responses. So we're going to be asking for some additional volunteers to join those who are on the outreach subcommittee and to expand their mission a little bit to include temporary and crisis solutions. So think about whether or not you might want to participate in that. It probably means at least just 1 meeting between now and October 2nd. The goal is for these subcommittees, the criminal justice subcommittee and the outreach and short-term temporary services groups, to come back to you on October 2nd with some focused recommendations for your consideration as a task force on those subject matters. Okay. We're also going to ask the panelists on the permanent housing and supportive services discussion if they want to, after today and listening to the discussion, to maybe forward to me some thoughts around recommendations that you really hope that the task force would consider. Maybe find a short list of consensus recommendations from you, our speakers, who live in the pretty complicated world of public housing every day, and maybe give us some suggestions for consideration again on October 2nd. Okay, finally, again, the 2 things I keep asking you guys to think about at each meeting. First, thank you for listening and trying to understand the perspectives of the other folks in the room. And thank you also for remembering that we are concerned about homelessness, and we're also concerned about criminal behaviors going on downtown. And we are not assuming that those things are perfect overlaps. The homelessness are not the sole reason that there are things going on downtown that folks are finding challenging. There are other people and other behaviors downtown that we need to figure out how to address as well. So it's really 2 challenges we're focusing on. Today I just add a 3rd thing. Be mindful of where we have good data and where we do not. It's what we know we have some gaps in the data. We weren't able to really drill down on the connection between folks who are homeless in the jail and crime. The jail folks told us they couldn't give us that data without an additional consultant data mining exercise. So there are gaps in our knowledge. We just need to be aware of those and figure out, are we acting on assumptions that we don't have the facts for, or are we pretty clear about what's going on here? And we're only meeting for 27 hours as a group. We're not going to rebuild Rome or create new Rome. But because of that, some of your recommendations may take the form of, you need to study, we need better information about this issue. It's an important issue and we need to get good recommendations to address it, but we don't know enough as a group now today, or as a community now today, to figure out what the answer is. With that, I want to turn it over, I also want to thank Sheriff Trenery for coming today and speaking to us before we get into the panels. Here he has a mercilessly short amount of time to talk with us about a very long and complicated subject, so thanks in advance to the Sheriff for his contribution today. And then with that, I'll just turn it over to Sylvia for her remarks.
I think you covered everything I could possibly say, except to say go Seahawks, and that this is our last meeting where we're really gathering information. After this meeting, we're going to go into recommendation stage. So you're getting ready to hear from folks who are really on the ground floor dealing with a lot of the issues that you're talking about from a social service perspective. So I hope you ask them good questions. They're ready for them, I think, right? Okay, good. And I just want to encourage you to...
Why are we getting that feedback?
I don't know.
Is it from the back speaker?
Oh, okay. So I just want to encourage you to stay in that learning mode today. And then we just came from a meeting earlier today with the Criminal Justice Subcommittee, which was a really good committee. We actually came up with some good suggestions, don't you think, Craig? I thought they were pretty good. So we had some good open discussions. So I want to remind everybody that we're really having good meetings behind the scenes. So this isn't all that's happening. So if you could be on a subcommittee, that's really important. That's where we kind of dig a little bit deeper than we can do in this broader perspective. So thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. So before we go there, we do have the housekeeping item of reviewing and approving the meeting 3 summary minutes. They're not so summary, and a lot of you participated in building those minutes. So if there are some corrections or additions to the meeting summary, which is in your packets behind the updated contacts list, I would ask for those. And if, yes, Alan.
I'd just like to offer a correction on page 7 of the minutes. The showers are in the alley behind the First Presbyterian Church. Wow, Journey and we do work together. It just happens to be in our alley.
I'm sorry, is that I'm just trying to find this. Oh, it's not, it's behind the First Presbyterian Church?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, I will make that correction. Any other corrections or additions? Thank you for that, Alan. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve these.
I move that we approve them.
Thank you, Alan. Second? Second. Thank you, Georgia D. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Thank you. Okay, now we will move on to Sheriff Trenery talking, a sort of follow-up about criminal justice and the jail issues. And you can speak from wherever you would like. Go to the podium. You may use my...
Yeah, that's all right. Afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, I'm going to try to avoid feedback. Just so you know, the issue of jail and corrections really cannot be addressed in a 10 or 15-minute topic. But there's a few things I think, having sat and listened to some of you talk, that I think is important to consider in terms of how do we get it. So I've been in law enforcement for 25 years. Was brought up under the culture of community policing, which is the idea that law enforcement get back to its roots and work closely with the community. I was one of the first deputies assigned to a program like that in the early 90s, and let me just tell you, there was no problem that we couldn't solve through an arrest. Quite frankly, I worked in lots of different communities. At one point I had over 150 different organizations as a deputy I was responsible for, and we learned really, really well that the best way to solve a community issue was to find who was creating the problem, put handcuffs on them, and take them to jail. And honestly, until July of 2013, I never really understood what that piece looked like. And in fact, prior to being the sheriff, the only thing I knew about the jail was, when do I get my handcuffs back? Because I wasn't focused on what went on behind the walls, I was focused on what the community needed. I give you that story because, very candidly, that's the way we in law enforcement have been operating for many, many years. When we built the current second part of the jail, which we call Oak Street, which basically doubled the population, We didn't change our approach. But one of the things we also didn't do is we didn't listen to the taxpayers. Because if some of you that have been around for a while remember, we posed a tax increase to the taxpayers to fund staffing for that facility. And the voters told us no. But we went ahead and opened that second part of the jail anyway. We didn't staff it appropriately. We didn't plan or foresee some of the social issues that were going to happen. But we continued to operate in law enforcement like we always had, which was, let's arrest our way out of the problem. Let me tell you one other story, and then I'm going to talk about statistics for just a few minutes, and I'll gladly answer questions. Last week I was at the jail. I try to get over there as often as I can because we're really working very hard to change how we use it. And I watched a young man get brought in with what we call a 2-deputy detail. It means typically the person is shackled, both their arms in front of them and their legs, and there's a deputy on either side. For us, what that means is the individual is a handful, has maybe threatened to assault an officer, and so it requires 2 people, 2 deputies instead of 1. So I watched this young man get brought in and placed into what we call AGSEG, which is aggravated segregation, which means he's going to go into a cell by himself. He's going to stay there for 23 hours out of every 24-hour day. We're going to make sure he gets fed, but he's only going to get 1 hour a day out by himself. Now, in my naive world, I believe these are the murderers, rapists, the really bad boogeymen that we in law enforcement exist to protect you all from. Unfortunately, when I asked what this young man's charge was, it was his 16th criminal trespass in the city of Sultan, and I'm certainly not picking on Sultan. And the judge had gotten tired of seeing him come back. He's a homeless young man who has a mental illness and is an opiate addict. So he gets a sentence, and because he can't be in general population because he has a mental illness, the only solution we have for him is to put him in a cell for 23 hours out of every 24-hour day. Now, I do not have a PhD in correctional science, but I will tell you that does not make him a better member of society when he's done serving his sentence. And I would argue as the sheriff that actually it makes it worse. So let me back up for a minute, and I'm hopefully done grandstanding with you. What we did with the jail as a county, I'm a little bit embarrassed about, because we got to a point in 2008 and 2009, like probably most of you here that are involved in the business world, and we realized that we were running out of money and we needed to get creative. So one of the things we did in the sheriff's office was we decided, let's sell every bed we've got in our facility. We've got a population, maximum population of about 1,227 beds. Now that includes all of our medical unit, all of our mental health ward, all of the places that we would normally not want people, but we decided, let's sell every bed, let's try to be the cheapest game in town, and let's try to keep this ship afloat. It didn't work. And so one of the things we've had to do is completely rethink the way we use the facility. Number one, the first change for us has been, we cannot solve the homelessness issue, which I believe is connected in some degrees to the mental illness increase we're seeing, which I believe is connected to the huge and quite frankly scary increase in opiate addiction. We cannot solve that triad of issues by criminalizing behavior and booking people in jail. And so the very first thing we did was we eliminated all of our regional contracts. So King County, Seattle, Bellevue, all those agencies that we in 2008 and 2009 said, hey, come to us, we want to be your provider. We said, please come get your folks, we don't want to be your provider anymore. The other thing that we've had to do very candidly, and I'll look over at Chief Templeman because I know he'll want to throw something at me, is we've had to really buckle down on our partner cities in Snohomish County. So we told all the cities outside of Snohomish County, we don't want to partner with you anymore. That's not working for us. We got our own problems. We need to focus on local issues. Then we said to our cities, we think we don't like the way you're using us, and so we want you to change your ways. And the only way we can get you to do that is we're going to really increase costs. Now, one of the things I've done in my career is I've served as a police chief in Stanwood, which is one of the sheriff's office contract cities. But I was responsible for my own jail bill. In order to be able to change the way we use the jail and to be able to provide the services we need to provide in the jail, we have had in some cases to quadruple the fees that we charge partner cities. So imagine if you're a large city like Everett who uses our jail because of population more than any other cities. It's just basically fact-based. And I come back and say, if you bring somebody in on a misdemeanor crime and they're mentally ill, I'm no longer going to charge you $65 a day. In 2015, I'm going to charge you $200+ a day. That has a major impact to your budget. And some of you out here, and I've had the opportunity to listen, you want to see more police officers on the street. I want to see more police officers on the street. But the challenge we face is we have to stop making the jail our solution. So one of the things we have implemented, we started in November. It was really like throwing mud on a wall to try and figure out what we needed to do. But we think we've gotten the right dynamic is we have implemented booking restrictions based on individual issues. We are desperately fighting the heroin epidemic. We know when somebody gets booked into our jail, if they're a heroin addict, that they instantly will start withdrawals. And withdrawals last about 3 days. Now, in most cases, it's not life-threatening, but it is a horribly painful thing to go through. So we can't take somebody that we know is going to be in our facility, it's a heroin addict, for longer than 3 days, and put them in general population. They have to be segregated out, because most of the time they will sleep in a cot, aside from going to the bathroom and eating. That, when you have 60 to 70 people at one time, presents a staffing problem. And so what we've done is we've created a threshold. And we've said we can only house so many misdemeanor opiate addicts at one time. And when we get to a point that we're over 100, we're going to stop taking them. We don't ever want to get to a place in our facility where we turn away violent felons. That would be crazy. But when you look to see how many misdemeanors are in our facility, I think you would be surprised how overused the jail is. We've had several different audits. We had the federal government come in twice, and I know I'm on TV, but rarely does the federal government show up to help. They show up to give advice. They gave us some great advice. They really did. And we have worked very hard to implement much of what they recommended, because the last thing we wanted to do is to have our facility come under a consent decree, where the federal government was actually running it day to day. And I think we've made progress. But the future of the jail, quite frankly, and I am going to wrap up here quickly, the future of the jail for us is really, we need to use it appropriately. It needs to be staffed commensurate with the clientele that we serve. And we need the jail to be down about 5 or 6 in the list of solutions for things like mental illness. Sadly, Snohomish County's jail is the largest mental health hospital we have in Snohomish County. And I'm embarrassed to admit that. I think that's unacceptable. We need to move forward with programs. And I know Cammie Hart Anderson isn't here, but one of the things we're working really hard on, and I think you've heard a little bit about, is a true jail transitional program that prevents mentally ill misdemeanants who have some type of addiction and more than likely are homeless, prevents them from going directly to jail, but puts them in the program with the idea that they spend time learning how to re-enter society. And the example I use wherever I go, and if you haven't figured out, I give this speech a lot. Wherever I go, the example I use is Housing Hope. I think it's a marvelous program. There are lots of good programs here, and I don't want to certainly be unfair to anybody else, but the idea that Ed and his folks work with is they get somebody back on their feet and they put them back in society is, I believe, what we should be doing in the criminal justice system. Now, for those people that are scary and commit violent crime, I have a place for them, and I'm happy to house them. But we've got to get away from using the jail the way we do. And so most of you know the cities have been really good at working with us. I give Chief Templeman a bad time, but one of the things that he has done is he's got his staff to come in to the jail and to see how we operate it. For those of you that are interested, I would strongly encourage you, especially panel members, to come over and take a jail tour. And if we need to add dates, I'll add dates. Because what I want to do is I want to prevent the solution being jail-related as we move forward. And I don't think that that's where you're headed, but I have a very strong opinion about the fact that we need to use the jail in appropriate settings and not overuse it like we have. I'll stop there and see if there are any questions or concerns. All right? Thank you all very much. Hopefully that's what you wanted.
All right. So that is a really good sort of recap on a lot of the things that we heard at the last meeting on the criminal justice panel, and the need to look for non-traditional solutions for some of the homeless population. Again, that's not the entire challenge we face, but thank you very much. Okay, so our first panel on temporary and emergency response, including emergency housing, day centers, feeding programs. We have 5 presenters: Nancy Cole with the Compass Center, Cassie Franklin, who you know with the Cocoon House. John, I think you're presenting today for the Gospel Mission, is that correct? Yeah? Sorry. Yes, sorry, Jim, sorry. Alan Dorway and Matthew Savage. Okay, so you guys can draw straws about who goes first. You can go in the order that you are there on the agenda. And would you like folks to hold questions till you've all gone through? I'm seeing some nods, and we have either way's okay.
Sure, I could go first.
And do you want to go from there, or is it easier for people to hear and if she is up at the podium?
Pardon?
Podium, I'm getting some requests for you to speak from the podium. If folks could just take turns up there. Is that okay?
Okay.
Take your time getting up there. There's a short discussion guide in your packet and some materials that you'll see about midway through. It should be.
Hello, so I am Nancy Cole, Compass Health, and I actually came prepared to talk about the housing supportive service wraparound, permanent housing, because that's what I have the most expertise in. So I'll just give a brief comment about what we're doing in terms of our temporary and our day centers, and then I will turn it over to people who have a little bit more background in that area, and I'll give you more information about us when I do the second half. Compass Health is in all 5 North counties. We serve about 18,000 people a year, and that's families, children, and adults. We have applied for, through the Snohomish County Endless Homeless Program, funding for motel vouchers, which has been a godsend during cold weather months when our folks are out on the streets, and we can put them up in a motel. We also have been able to secure some private grants that allow us to take just anybody that calls us to put them in a motel for a week, 2 weeks, or a month, so we can help get them off the streets and then help hopefully get them into some kind of housing. Housing, of course, you'll hear many times today is an issue. There's enough funding, there isn't enough housing. And that's why people end up, unfortunately, in the jails. We also have a peer center, which we serve about 120 people a day, and that's located in our Bailey building on Broadway. And it is it's open Monday through Friday, 8 to 3 p.m. We serve breakfast and lunch there. And then we have many different kinds of groups, wellness recovery, job preparation, men and women's groups, sexual identity groups. They have gardening classes and crafts and other fun things. And then we also have paid peer counselors. So that's people who have been successful in their recovery and are able to kind of help support other people. Like I said, I'm prepared to talk more about housing and the wraparound, so I'm going to turn this over to Cassie. Thank you.
And I'm sorry about that, Nancy. You were volunteered for both by Tom, and I forgot that when we talked before the meeting. So thank you for pinch hitting.
Okay. Jen, who's in the room, knows I'm so not tech savvy, so I'm not sure I'll be able to operate this. But real quickly, in your packet, beforehand was sent out this. It's blue. I want to urge you to read it if you haven't already. It's a really good, short article from the National Network for Youth. It has a lot of information on the factors that contribute to youth homelessness, as well as some stories and comments from the youth. So since we're not doing a focus group with youth, you can hear straight voices of youth of why they're homeless, what they want, what they need. So it's a really good article. Also in your packet that was on the table today is this brand new report from Columbia Legal Services. Important statistics to note in that packet are that 30% of the homeless in our state are homeless unaccompanied youth. That means teenagers that do not have adults with them. That's the population that Cocoon House serves. But that this doesn't include 78% of the schools. So that number is far higher than what this report dictates, and it's frighteningly high in this report. But there's other good information in there that I'd like you to look at. So as far as the information here, I'm going to talk about emergency shelter and transitional housing and our day center here that's available for homeless youth, homeless teens, and homeless young adults aged 12 to 24. And if I do this right, do I point it here or? Yay! Okay. As the information in this presentation will tell you, kids who have already been homeless are highly likely to become our homeless adults. And remember, 33% of the homeless are under the age of 24, which is kind of a shocking statistic, really, when you think about it. Many of the homeless we are seeing many of the homeless youth we are seeing were homeless youth who didn't get the services they needed. So these adults that we're seeing in the community, these chronically homeless adults, were formerly homeless youth that did not access services. I want to really quickly share this story with you. I'm not going to read it to you. This is a young man who entered our shelter very recently. You can read this story, but it's a really important piece to note. He survived in the woods alone for months and off and on for 2 years. He was 17 when he came into our program. It's kind of shocking to think that there's a 15-year-old living alone in the woods and on the streets for 2 years. When he came into our program, he had all those survival skills from on the streets, and he had zero social skills and zero ability to navigate the world as we know it. Fortunately, through the program, he was able to thrive. And he's back in a housing program now with his mom. And so really the importance of these outreach and emergency services can actually break the cycle of homelessness and keep these kids from becoming our chronically homeless adults. It's a pretty special kid. And I'm going to go fast because I was told to really fly through it because we've got a lot of people that need to speak. But please ask questions at the end. Okay, let's see. So kids are more likely than adults to become homeless. 75% of those kids turn to drug and alcohol to survive the circumstances. So imagine living on the streets. Drug and alcohol is a survival technique for these kids. The average age of a homeless young person is 14.7 years old. So they're under the age of 15 when they become homeless. They have no way of supporting themselves outside of exploitation and criminal activity. So these kids they can't go get a job, they don't have any other options, and they are definitely victims for the criminal element that does exist in our society. They don't have a safe place to turn to, they don't have healthy adults. So kind of interesting and sad statistics on that slide. In Snohomish County, right here in Everett, 17.5% of the chronically homeless population are 18 to 24. So if you are chronically homeless by the time you're 18, imagine what life circumstances you've faced up until that time. I'm not going to read through the rest of it because I know that you can, but pretty important statistics here. So why are they homeless? Like I said, that National Network for Youth article gives you a really good picture of why they're homeless. They're homeless because of family conflict. They're homeless because of abuse and neglect. It's a little different than adult populations that may have lost their job and then suddenly become homeless or something's gone on like that. But if they become homeless, they will become our chronically homeless adult population, right? So there's a lot of things that lead to these young people to be homeless, but it's really, it's not their choice to be out there on the street. They are escaping an abusive home, neglect, maybe they have mental health issues as well. And so it's kind of it's a different group of folks that we're talking about here when we're talking about youth and young adults. So here's about the resources that we have available. Oh, whoops, I gotta go forward. There we go. Emergency shelters. Cocoon House operates the only licensed 8-bed emergency shelter for unaccompanied homeless youth in Everett. So we have 8 beds for kids under the age of 18. unlike adult emergency housing programs, our limit of length of stay is 21 days. We have 21 days, 3 weeks to find them housing. Very short amount of time. Our goal is to get these kids home if it's safe and appropriate. Remember, these kids are running away from safe and inappropriate housing, so sometimes that's not the option. But that's the resource that's available. At this program, we provide wraparound services as well as possible through extensive partnerships with a lot of the other service providers in this room. Compass Health provides mental health counseling. Catholic Community Services provides drug and alcohol counseling. We bring Compass Health on site. There's a lot of great services that are available for our kids on site at our shelter. For kids in that 18 to 24, remember this is 17.5% of the homeless population of youth and young adults, the Everett Gospel Mission is the only emergency shelter available to this population. In the best of circumstances, the teen brain is fully developed at age 25. So imagine these kids that have experienced enormous trauma. They are not developmentally ready to be in an adult housing system. It's not the same type of system that Cocoon House is able to provide, case management, things like that. So really there's an incredible need for a young adult emergency shelter in our community that could help that 17.5% of our homeless young people. Okay. So, transitional housing. Cocoon House operates long-term transitional housing for kids under the age of 18. 13 of those beds are for our unaccompanied youth that are homeless in our community. 7 are for kids that are needing a foster care placement and aren't receiving a foster care placement or can't find the appropriate foster care placement. Like I said, in the emergency housing program, we have drug and alcohol counseling, mental health counseling, community health center brings visiting nurses on site. I want to let you know because first of all, we found this is a best practice for really helping these kids break the cycle and come out of homelessness and be successful on the other end. Also, it's really important that we're not duplicating what other people are doing. We do that all through partnerships. There's also transitional housing in Everett for that 18 to 24-year-old population. This is offered through our partner, Friends of Youth. They're generally, the majority of their services are in King County. They're a King County organization, but they operate one transitional housing program here in Everett. It has 12 beds. It is always full. And it's very important that this is a separate system because, as I said, it's a separate population. We wouldn't want these kids to be into the adult system, which is also has limited beds and limited capacity. Day centers. So, Cocoon House runs the only day center for homeless teens 12 to 24 in Everett. We are open 2 to 7 p.m. every day for teens to come in. We have showers, laundry, bathrooms. We do hot meals 3 times a week. We're thinking about partnering with a local organization to offer a 4th meal on the weekends. We offer food through the rest of the time, kind of warm-ups or snack bars, things like that. We have drug and alcohol treatment on site, again, through Catholic Community Services. We're across the street from Community Health Center, and a visiting nurse will come on site to work with our kids. And we also partner with WorkSource, who does GED and job training for our kids on site. I want to also add, a lot of these kids that are in this day center, and this day center kind of averages somewhere between 20 and 35 kids a day. So it's had over 40 on some days. A lot of these kids that come into that program are not eligible for our housing program if there's if they have a criminal history that would maybe put other clients in our programs at risk. If they're over the age of 18, we can't yet house them. We really want to change that. Cocoon House has some big plans. But it's a very important resource that we have for young people. Crisis intervention. So, we offer crisis intervention through street outreach. I mentioned in our meeting 2 weeks ago that we do this street outreach. We go throughout the community, not just in Everett, we go through all out Snohomish County, but in Everett, we are in Everett at least once or twice a week doing outreach. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's in the afternoon, sometimes it's late at night, in teams of 2 or more, where we work to build trust with these kids, hand them resources such as, it's all in like a Ziploc bag with our contact information. It's like a granola bar, a hygiene pack, something like that. If they need a coat, we'll give them those items. And always with the goal of building enough trust with these kids so that they will come into our drop-in center, so that they will come into our emergency shelter. And in best circumstances, we'll transport them right there to our emergency shelter. And that transportation, there was an article actually in the Herald yesterday, we provide 24/7 transportation to kids anywhere in Snohomish County that need to get into a safe shelter. We have a partnership with Everett Transit. We are partnering with the Everett Library. We obviously do this in other parts of the county, but I'm going to focus on Everett. And so anywhere in the city of Everett, a kid can hop on a bus. The bus driver is trained. If a kid says, hey, I need help, then they call Cocoon House, and within 45 minutes, we'll pick up that young person. We can transport them either back home, or we can bring them to our emergency shelter because we do 24/7 intake. So, all of this could not, I'm getting behind, aren't I? Here we go. There we go. All of this couldn't be possible without the great neighbors in this great community. This is one of the most collaborative communities I've ever had the honor of working in. We have a lot of open conversations with our neighbors. As you can imagine, sometimes if you say, hey, I'm going to open up a teen shelter next door to you, and the community doesn't really get excited right away. I want to remind folks, and this is how we talk to our neighbors too, we provide 24/7 supervision for our kids. I don't know how many households in Everett can say the same for their kids, right? So it's never like the kids can take over the house and throw a party with a kegger. That doesn't happen at Cocoon House. We do have issues, but we work really hard to be a really good neighbor. We have conversations if there's concerned community members. We want to ensure that our neighborhood is safe for everyone, for our kids, for the neighbors, for the businesses there, because this is the neighborhood we're trying to raise these children in. We want it to be a safe and warm and welcoming place. Also, on the bottom part of that slide, we talk about not round-the-clock supervision. So our shelter and our transitional housing program, 24/7, round-the-clock staffed, because kids are there at any time. Our drop-in center is open 2 to 7 days a week. It's closed part of the time, so we don't supervise that program. We have surveillance, and we've actually partnered at times with the police and reported things and have the same issues that our other business partners have that we're trying to remedy with kind of positive images and take care of our building and different ways to encourage that there isn't graffiti and that there isn't the criminal activity. And I'm being told to speed it up. So I'm going to, I promise, I'll be super fast. Okay. So moving on. Here we go. In summary, I just want you to pay attention to the statistics that I shared. 17.5% of the chronically homeless are 18 to 24. We only have 28 beds in Everett, and those are all for kids under 18. And the homeless population in this age group is growing. And what's needed to serve these is intensive supports, treatments, counseling, and collaboration between systems. Money is necessary. No one likes to talk about it, but this doesn't work without money for these programs, and the public sources for this work are dwindling. Housing options for youth, increased service-rich. So service-rich has got to be a focus with some of our special populations, and housing for 18 to 24-year-olds. Treatment. All of our populations that we work with struggle with drug and alcohol and addiction, and so having enough treatment options and jobs. I cannot help these kids be self-sufficient young adults unless they have opportunities to develop careers and be healthy young adults and giving back. So, take questions at the end. Is that what you want?
Hello, and thank you for having me today. My name is John Hull. I'm the director of the Everett Gospel Mission Men's Shelter, and I'm pleased to be able to present a little bit about our services and our population that we serve down there. First, I'd love to say thank you for having this. I've been a resident of Everett for over 10 years now. I'm a native Boisean, but Everett is definitely a lot like it in its community feel and the support and the coordination as evidenced by this task force. And I have been blessed and excited to see that each of you here are willing to come and spend your time to discuss this issue, especially in light of how I've seen a number of other cities handle homelessness and poverty on their streets. That you would be willing to take your time as business persons, as city representatives, and as social service agencies to collaborate and think about how can we best provide solutions and address the issues that are presented to us. I'm encouraged, and I know that our clients are encouraged by that as well, so thank you all for giving your time toward that effort. So today I just want to cover a few things of what the Everett Gospel Mission does at the men's shelter particularly. Let me just begin by we provide a meal every day, 3 or 2 times a day to the public, so lunch and dinner. So anybody that needs a hot meal can come and get that. We provide breakfast to our residents that stayed with us the night before. We also have a food pantry where we provide food to households and individuals that need food boxes, as well as to gleaners and other food providers throughout the county. Clothing. We have a clothing room, so anybody that does need clothing, we receive donations of clothing from the community, and then we're able to provide those items to our residents first, and then to members of the public that are able to come down to our facility and receive access to those items. And then let me speak to our beds. First, I thought I had a large number of beds at 157 until I heard how many the jail has. And I am humbled and excited that I only have 157 beds to manage now, and I won't complain again, Sheriff. We have 81 emergency shelter beds that we provide to individuals for up to 90 concurrent or 90 days that they can build up. So they can stay with us one day, not the next day, and come back the third day, and that's just 2 days. So they can do that for up to 90 days. And then we ask them not to reside at our facility for 90 consecutive days. We call that a trigger for change, that if the life that you're living, that transient lifestyle is where you want to be, we can accommodate that, but we're also desirous to see you have access to some of our other services and to pursue some of those other change opportunities. And so that 90 days out is just an opportunity for others to come in and receive that bed, as well as for a time to reflect and determine really where do you want to go with your life. So that emergency shelter bed is yours as long as you stay in it. So it provides a safe and stable environment for somebody for up to 90 days. And what's good about that is they can relax, they can rest a little bit, and they can begin to plan. It's not sufficient amount of time to really plan a full future of where they're going to go from there, but it's not 7 days, it's not 10 days. It's a sufficient amount of time for our individuals to rest, to begin to build trust, to incorporate into the environment, get to know our staff, get to know the other residents, and then build that trust, which is a really important element to day services, to our residential services, and really to just addressing the issues of poverty in an individual's life, is having a community of relational trust that they can begin to work from and have that support from, to really begin to have hope and belief that they can change and to pursue those opportunities of change. So from those emergency shelter beds, we also have 76 other beds that we provide in our upstairs facility. These are transitional beds is what we'd classify them as. We have a passport program that is 57 of those beds that somebody can stay in at 6 months at a time, and it's kind of we have a 6-month plan that they develop an action plan, and then as they approach the end of that, we reevaluate where they're at, or we're technically evaluating them along the way, but at the end of that 6 months is just another time for us to reevaluate. Do we want to continue this? Are you still working the plan? Is it still benefiting you? And is there anything more that we can do to help you further along and get back into a safe and stable living situation? So they can do that for up to 2 years in the transitional housing program. We also have a drug and alcohol recovery program that we call Genesis that I have up to 9 beds for individuals there. That's an 18-month program, 12 to 18-month program for people that want to pursue drug and alcohol or chemical dependency recovery. In addition to that, we have 9 beds that we set aside for medical rest. We have a partnership with Providence Everett Emergency Department that they can discharge individuals, homeless individuals that come into their services into our beds. And we have 4 beds set aside for that, and then the rest are set aside for other individuals that need medical rest as determined by their doctor. And then we have a few private rooms for longer-term guests that do more around our facility to help us out. I'm a bit of a linear guy, so I'm just going to look at some of the questions that were asked and address them really quick. So what are the challenges and the gaps that we see in our services? So one of the challenges and the gaps, or the challenges, is again in developing that environment of trust where people are treated like human beings. We once had a speaker who spent 6 months on the streets, and he said the hardest thing after spending 6 months on the street, the hardest thing for him to do again was to look at his wife in the eyes. He said, after 6 months on the streets, I got used to people not looking me in the eyes. And I stopped trying because I lost hope. And he was graduating from college, a very successful young man. But even that lack of eye contact and human treatment had deflated him so much that he couldn't trust his wife to reflect back that human dignity. So building that environment of trust and human dignity for the men who come through our doors is one of the first elements that we need to do. And I want to say this committee is a significant element of doing that in this community. So again, thank you. It is important that we take the time to understand where the people are that we're trying to work with and help and serve or address what those issues are. And understanding communication is an important part of that. So another area is lack, or another challenge and a gap is a lack of community awareness about the differences. So what we mean by this is two things. The differences between somebody in poverty and somebody not in poverty. So if you've grown up in poverty and suffered generational poverty, that is, most of your life has been in poverty or all of your life has been in poverty, you're going to approach life and make decisions slightly differently, significantly differently than somebody who didn't grow up in poverty. So when we walk out of our stores and we walk out of our houses and we walk out of our places of worship and we walk out of our places of comfort and we look at someone who's making decisions that we don't understand, there's reasons. And to apply our own view of how things should be done to their decisions there's a disconnect. And so we see one of those gaps is understanding that disconnect and how do we begin to educate ourselves to overcome that gap and begin a better line of communication between those in poverty and those that are not in poverty. And a final challenge and gap really is what I would call coordinated supportive outreach solutions with expertise in mental health, chemical dependency, and generational poverty. So what we see with single men in particularly is a lack of support, of understanding of men who have mental health, have chemical dependency, and a generational poverty, and how does somebody help somebody in that situation? So we think that having access to individuals that have expertise in all 3 of those areas, or a team of individuals that have expertise, would be a beneficial element for addressing these street-level social issues. So ideas for improvement. When I was reading through previous reports, I came across the RAPS program, which we're familiar with and is a very successful program. I think it's a wonderful model. And as an idea, something like that, targeted specifically at single men who may or may not have children, would be a very successful element, we believe. Excuse me. That could begin to address and build that elements of relationship and trust at the street level. So one thing that we certainly see is the awareness of people living on the streets of what services are available to them. There certainly are guys that I work with that know they know where they can go to get meals. They know how to live on the streets, but they don't know how to begin to get housing. They don't know how to begin to get mental health services. They don't know how to begin to get chemical dependency services. So having a team of individuals that knows those elements, chemical dependency, mental health, housing, that can then wrap around them and support them in that. This could be from a single agency or a team of agencies, but something that's specifically targeted to that would be something that we would be quite excited about at our men's shelter. So let's see, so how can these programs be an entry to longer-term solutions for individuals? So at the Everett Gospel Mission, I have 2 case managers that work with our transitional clients as well as some of our emergency clients, providing access to community resources. They're representing those clients to the agencies outside of the mission. We provide a safe and stable living environment. That's what we do really, really well, where we take care of your food, your clothing, your housing. My case managers work with all the other agencies in this community to provide, to get our clients access to those. So more of that, where there's a lot more communication between not only the agencies, but the community as well. In talking with some of my case managers, they had thought that some sort of conversation that could facilitate conversation between local businesses, agencies, that housing providers as well as shelter agencies, of what each of us does on a regular basis, that could provide that opportunity to understand that and how we could better help. And then as individuals rise up, we heard that with the legal services presentation, that they had an individual that they just all had to get together and talk about this one person. So there are people like that every day that we serve at the mission and in every agency here, that we want to talk with others about how we can better serve that individual and better provide solutions to them. And what are the best ways to help residents in shelters or those in crisis get connected with permanent housing solutions? So I think I just covered that as well. It's an environment of relational trust. It's probably the biggest and most significant thing that we have to begin to do to really be able to reach out and help. I don't tend to provide or receive help from someone I don't trust. And if you're in poverty, if you're on the streets, trust is not an economy you're familiar with. And so beginning to establish an environment where they can begin to experience trust and become more familiar with that would be a wonderful way to begin to help those individuals that are on the streets and addressing some of these issues that we've been talking about. Mitigation strategies. So we have done a few things at the mission with our neighbors. We have a good neighbor policy where we ask our guys not to participate in illegal activities, and if the police inform us that they have within a certain region around our mission, then we will relieve them of services for a short time, from 24 hours to 48, up to including a permanent bar of providing services to them. So we started doing that. Well, the Good Neighbor Policy is a couple years old when the city made much of the construction of the I-5 underpass there on Smith Avenue with the nice wide sidewalks. It's a wonderful bed for many individuals. We certainly had a lot more issues around our neighborhood of feeling unsafe. So we started to talk with our neighborhood. We had neighborhood meetings. So we did a lot of outreach there just to understand again, well, what are the issues and what might we be able to do to better serve our community? Because we want to be good neighbors as well. And I just want to say, on behalf of the homeless population, they want to be good neighbors also. So the guys that are at my mission often are the ones that are out. They're residents that volunteer on their own to go out into the streets, clean up around the mission, far from the mission. They are homeless, but they just happen to be homeless. They're not less than human. They just don't have a roof over their head that they can call their own necessarily. But they have dignity and they have purpose. And so what we want to do is provide an environment where they have love and acceptance, worthwhileness. They can feel capable, valuable, and not alone. And if we can do that, then I think we can begin to build that trust that can address some of these issues and begin to invite them into an arena where we can help them. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Alan Dorway. I'm blessed to serve a church that hosts one of our feeding programs in downtown and partners with various community groups already. And I'd like to just highlight a couple of those. First, in your packet, you have towards the back, you have a double-sided thing called Queen It's a New Day. We help with other congregations host them in our building space. I'm also going to pass out, they're willing to have an open house. And I just got this information, so I believe I made enough copies for everyone. They're having an open house Monday, October 8th, and anyone is invited to attend. Our church also hosts NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is a group, it's been mentioned in the Herald recently. There's a great ad on the Herald's website. Mike and Carolyn Goza host a basics class and a parent support group on mental illness, and our church gladly opens our doors to host that group. I'd like to thank you for inviting Matthew and I first to serve on this committee, this task force, and then secondly, you don't understand that when you give pastors or preachers time to talk, we might take well more than you thought. I'd like to share some perspective unique, I believe, to our churches and broadly from a faith community standpoint this afternoon. I believe that churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship uniquely think of their facilities as well as their core identity as things to serve the community. That service, outreach, good works, whatever one would call it, takes place and manifests in a variety of ways. As a Presbyterian pastor to a Christian church, our witness can be defined in a brief manner as following the call of Jesus Christ in our lives to be a lover of God and a lover of our neighbor. Many churches use verses such as the Great Commission, the parable of the lost sheep, or others to guide what we would call evangelism and mission. For me, the guiding verses and understanding of the good news of Jesus Christ, to me as a flawed, grace-relying disciple, is that I'm consistently learning to love and serve God with my entire being, heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love my neighbor, which is what led me to Everett. Part of our denomination's hiring process is that where a candidate for a pastoral position and a church are trying to get to know each other. In that process, first impressions are very important. For instance, I have earrings. I enjoy to color my hair, and I'm an avid Chicago Cubs fan. All of which, as a first impression, could derail my interviewing process, at least according to my dad. First Presbyterian Church of Everett also has challenges, primarily an older, downtown located building. However, in my openness in the call process, as was Everett, the church open in their call process, our common interests aligned. First, my understanding as a disciple, as I briefly described before, and my heart's desire to serve a church that sees its keen sense of their own identity for mission. That is our feeding program called Dinner at the Bell. That Dinner at the Bell was a great first impression to me. Dinner at the Bell is a feeding program model that has been in our community and hosted by our church for over 12 years. It is run and led by a dedicated group of church members and other volunteers every Wednesday evening, and depending on the year, is opened 50 or more weeks. If it's Christmas or New Year's, we defer to other service providers who are feeding. On our first Wednesday, when we began Dinner at the Bell, we had 37 people show up for dinner. Recently, during my time as pastor here for 4.5 years, our numbers have grown from averaging around 110 guests in 2010 to 120 a week in 2012, and now we're up to 135 individuals on average this year. We operate Dinner at the Bell in a manner of treating anyone. It is a community meal. All of you are invited to come and eat as well. As a guest who receives welcome, a place to get out of the weather, receives a hot meal, and through time meeting with our guests, we build relationships that have led to mutual care, respect, and love. On 2 Wednesdays a month, we also freely give out toiletries to our guests. Our church, even with volunteer partnerships, carries the financial and volunteer burden for food, kitchen, building, and bathroom use. We have taken down decorative walls and shrubs to decrease drug and alcohol use and littering on our property. We've also put trash cans liberally around our facility to decrease trash outside. And we do not allow carry-out, though some cannot be prevented, again as a way to decrease trash outside of our facility. Trust me, our volunteers and our custodian work hard to keep our building and the surrounding area clean. And I would agree with John that many of our guests do that as well. Our church is proud, and like every feeding program, is unique in our style and is on the front lines of serving those in our community who are in need. And I will return to this thought in a minute. 6 years ago, we were blessed by a ministry called Showers for the People. Frank Fargo converted a fifth wheel into 2 separate shower facilities, and he comes to the alley behind our church at 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. and does as many as 23 showers a night, sometimes staying to 10 o'clock or later, no matter what the weather is outside. He just passed 5,800 showers in his 6 years of service. He brings his fifth wheel Wednesday to Everett first, and on Saturdays down to a program in Linwood. He spends about $4,000 a year maintaining his trailer truck, providing toiletries and clean undergarments for those who are taking a shower. Now, as I mentioned before, I believe churches and faith communities and those feeding programs in our community are on the front line of addressing hunger and homelessness in our community. We are concerned with vandalism, public intoxication, and litter. It affects our own building and our own space and our own ability to serve. I believe that if the food programs were closed down or forced to move from the downtown, issues we are discussing here would only increase. As such, a church has an ethos of caring for their community. Every church calls its members to serve and give back, especially through volunteer hours, and to care for the community. Whether it's in their own church, PTA, Housing Hope, some of the other organizations here, Cocoon House, wherever, we desire to send members out to encourage them to use their faith in the community. So for a church which sees itself as a giving member to the community, to be called a part of the problem is a difficult space for a pastor and a church to be in. We see ourselves as full participants in the good for the community. And while I'm open to seeking partnerships, and I've learned a lot by being on this task force, and I'm not trying to be defensive, this has been really difficult for me, because on the front lines, it's hard to take a step back. It's hard to take a step back at times and get a larger view, and that's what I think this committee has been challenging me to do. We try to promote events. We try to ask our guests to get on lists for housing and to help just beyond food. But we see ourselves on that front line, and when you're serving at times 170 meals a night, it's difficult to take that step back. I would be open to solutions for a designated area with wraparound services if we could maintain our unique perspective and have other faith communities retain theirs as they serve there. However, moving significantly away from the downtown to me is not part of the solution. Without the continued care, love, and relationship building that churches do internally and to the community, I think that is one way that we do this through our feeding programs. I think that is something, if we stopped that, our community would suffer. Thank you for this time.
Hello, I'm Pastor Matthew Savage from the Journey Church. I'm the lead teaching pastor there, and I'm delighted to serve as well. And I echo much of the sentiment that Alan shared and appreciate him doing so well. We're an evangelical church. We're a Bible-believing church. We're a church that is in downtown Everett. We're on Colby, 2814 Colby. We love Everett. We're excited to be in the city. We have moved to the city. Originally, when we planted our church 8 years ago, we were in the Mill Creek suburbs, and we felt God calling us to the city. Cities are remarkable things. Culture is forged here. Cities are fascinating, mixed-use, walkable hubs of culture, and we want to be a part of that. We want to be a part of forging culture and loving the city and taking good care of it and being good stewards of it. We were drawn to the city. In cities, there are more people than plants, and churches are for people, not plants. So we moved from the suburbs to the cities to reach the city and to serve it. And we are excited to do that. We were drawn by, like I said, the opportunity to participate in culture and forge it, the opportunity to contribute Everett's a beautiful place and filled with many wonderful people, and we were excited to come, move to the city 5 years ago and serve it, to demonstrate mercy and grace and love and compassion. And we're delighted to do that. What we do, we offer a meal on Saturdays, in addition, obviously, to Sunday services that most churches have. We do a meal on Saturday that is, just as Alan said, a community meal. Anyone and everyone is welcome to come. There is no discrimination. And we serve anywhere from 70 to about 150 people each Saturday. The meal is from 5 to 6 p.m. on Saturday. And during that time, we have a service. We have a brief time of sharing the gospel with people, sharing the good news of Jesus Christ, which we believe brings personal transformation to people. And we pray for individuals. We pray for all that will allow us to pray for them, and then we serve them typically a hot meal. We also provide clothing afterwards, and so in the warmer months, that'll be maybe jeans or underwear and those socks, those type of things. And in the cooler months, we provide sleeping bags and hygiene products. We partner with a variety of other local churches that perhaps aren't big enough to host their own meal. Maybe they can't staff it. Maybe they can't provide enough food. Maybe their facility isn't sufficient to do so. So we partner with them and are delighted to do so. And we staff it with about 10 volunteers every week from our church as well. We also provide diapers for parents in the community. Diapers are expensive. Children need them. And so we provide free diapers one Saturday a month, at the last Saturday of the month, in a ministry called Diapers and Donuts. And parents are allowed to come in and check their kids and actually get an hour and a half of childcare, fellowship with some other adults, eat some donuts, and get a free package of diapers, no strings attached. And then once a year, we have what we call a community baby shower, and we are thrilled to do this. We've done this for multiple years, in which, if you're young and pregnant, or if you have an unplanned pregnancy, or if you're perhaps a single woman and pregnant, or you're in an abusive or neglectful relationship, there aren't a lot of support. There is typically not a lot of support around you throwing you a baby shower. And I have children. I don't know how many of you had children, but we have 2 boys, and when we each had a son, people, our friends and family, threw us a baby shower. And it was tremendously helpful because babies cost a lot of money. It takes, thousands of dollars of cribs and formula and bottles and diapers and all the other things that go with it. Well, when you're young and single and perhaps disenfranchised or underprivileged, there's no one there to throw you often a baby shower. And so we offer a baby shower for the community. This year we had over 90 families participate in that baby shower. Our church donated tens of thousands of dollars worth of new and used items, and we served with dozens and dozens of hours getting that ready and prepared, and we were thrilled to have over 20 families in our church serve and 90 families come and participate and receive baby items. So that's what we do. But the meal is weekly. We serve the meal, and as I said, it ranges from about 70 to 150 people a week. Towards the beginning of the month is when attendance is lowest, and then as the checks that many of these people receive have run out, the end of the month tends to double the number of people that come. 70%, these are estimates. This isn't scientific hard data, but this is an estimate from this pastor at our meal. 70% of the people are homeless. 20% roughly are not homeless, but rather likely elderly or disabled and elderly, or just disabled. And 10% are families with children that are coming. We heard some interesting statistics a couple of weeks ago. I'll remind you of just a couple of them. One was that there, depending on your definition of homelessness, 1,065 people that literally have no shelter, no cover every night in Everett. 900 kids in the Everett School District, or excuse me, it was either 800 or 900 that were considered homeless as well by other definition, by a little bit broader definition. And so 10% of the people that come are families with children, and some of those children are malnourished and in need of food. We do this every week. It's a tremendous undertaking. It ends up costing us thousands of dollars a year, but we are delighted to do it. We consider it a privilege to do it, to love our neighbor. Indeed, as Alan so well said, we desire to love our God and to love our neighbor. And so this is part of that outreach that we do. I see the meal as treating the symptom. I really do. The cause is what needs to be addressed, and that's ultimately in here what we're after. One of the symptoms of these variety of causes of homelessness, and if you recall, we've talked about joblessness or the sudden loss of a job, we've talked about abuse, we've talked about addiction, we've talked about mental health. These are the primary drivers for homelessness. A symptom of that is hunger, of malnourishment. And so the meal treats a symptom. But what I firmly believe is that we are also, for some at the meal, not all, but for some at the meal, able to address or treat the cause, which we believe to be a personal and spiritual one. In other words, God changes lives. He transforms lives. He's transformed my life, and what we hold forth in the gospel is the loving God who seeks them out to transform their lives. And I know for not all in this room subscribe to that, but obviously we believe that firmly and boldly and unashamedly. And we have seen God do that, like I said, not only in my life, but in the lives of many others. And so we believe that this meal provides an opportunity to treat the symptom and the cause. And we've seen many success stories of leading people out of addiction, helping people be removed from abusive relationships or get the help that they need. What is available now? That was one of the questions. Well, there is a variety of meals, and I've made some copies, and I apologize for not getting them to you sooner, and I apologize that they're not the best copies. I'll pass this around, but there's a list of meals in Everett in which usually 2 to 3 groups in the evening or a day serve a meal, provided by about 15 different groups or churches or faith-based organizations mostly. And obviously in addition to that are the food bank and food stamps. All of them put together don't scratch the surface for the homeless in our community. Like I said, on a full night we're serving 150. I'm not aware of how many Allen or these other programs serve, but if we're talking about 1,100 a day with no shelter and no home that need to eat, these 3 a day are I'm sure not even getting to probably a third or 40% of what is needed. Some of the challenges and the gaps. Well, challenges are connecting people to the services that they need. That's a very real. So we would love to have a social worker or some other wraparound service ability to connect people to services. We've talked about that at length. We need, in our specific case, we need some healthier food options. Most of the food that we serve is heavily processed because and when the reason it's that is because that's the cheap food. That leads to obesity. It leads to other health problems later down the road, and so a challenge would be able to afford or have donated healthier food options that would not create greater health complications. We need more volunteers. We're always in need of volunteers. You do not have to be a member of our church to serve. We would be delighted to receive you to serve. We would love to have you come and serve at the meal. Again, every Saturday we begin setting up at 4. The meal's at 5. We're done by 6. And then I would love to see some broad-based communication and support from city and local business owners. It would be great to have greater communication. Unfortunately, all communication I've had with business owners or the city has not been pleasant or encouraging. And I echo, obviously Alan and I have talked many times before, I echo his sentiments when he says that it is shocking as a pastor who is called to love people and to serve them with grace and empathy and compassion and mercy to be told that you are part of the problem. That is a shocking and astonishing thing. We want to be good neighbors. We're here because we love the city. We're here because we want to seek the good of the city, and the city is the people. It's not buildings, it's people. And we're here to love them and to serve them. And so we don't consider ourselves part of the problem, but rather part of the solution and contributors to good things in our city. And we want to be, as I said, good neighbors and seek the good of the city. I live in the Bayside neighborhood. My children go to public school. I walk to work. We're in downtown. I am for this city and my churches as well. A large, I would say a majority, 50% of our people come from Central and North Everett. So we are citizens, we are taxpayers, we are people who are in the city for the city. Some gaps that we have, I think clearly, and some of these are not all my ideas, so I don't want to take credit for them, but personal hygiene is a big gap as far as a need in our communities. We have a good start, I'd say, with some feeding programs. Personal hygiene at the showers. Frank Fargo is fantastic, and what he does is wonderful. And I don't know if you've ever been camping and gone a few days without a shower, but when you come back, what's the first thing you want? You want a public restroom and a shower. And I was just camping 2 weeks ago and reminded of that. Well, we need 100 Franks. We need 100 guys that will help provide, men and women, that will provide showers like that. That would be fantastic. And so personal hygiene is an issue that we need to address. This would be restrooms, haircuts, showers, laundry facilities. We need help connecting people to job services, so writing a resume. And then many of them, in my experience, when I try to help them get a job, they don't have the proper documentation to get a job. And so someone or some clear process by which we can walk them through to get the proper documentation so that they can get a job, that they might maybe perhaps be able to have a mailbox or P.O. box. Those are some gaps that I think would be helpful to address. Ideas for improvement, well, we have had some small support from mainly one business in the Everett community, but we would love an opportunity to partner with business owners and address these issues with them, dialogue with them, and improve this, and support and acceptance from the business community and the city. We would love to have social workers, as I said. I don't know how possible this is. Visit our meals maybe even once a month to pair people to services. We'd love to see the creation of a hygiene center that had lockers where people might be able to store some things, have a shower, perhaps launder their clothing. And yeah, and I want to also say I share Alan's sentiments about a centralized location, and I share his willingness to dialogue, but also his concerns. And last but not least, there was the question, what types of mitigation strategies have been deployed to reduce impacts on neighboring residents and businesses? And this is a very good question and a valid question. And as I said, we are serious about wanting to be good neighbors in the community and wanting to love everybody well and take care of everyone. What we have done is, there's a few things that we have done. The meal starts at 5, which is later in the day. Obviously on Saturday, it lasts only an hour. And previous, when we first started the meal, you had an incentive to show up early because you would get served food first. We've actually changed the order of entry into the building such that it doesn't matter if you show up at 4 o'clock, an hour early, or if you show up at 4:59 the moment the doors are opening. That does not affect the order in which you will receive food. So when they come in, we open the doors, they come in, they sit down, we have a time of devotional, a time of teaching around from the Bible, we have a time of prayer, engaging with individuals, and then we will allow them to get up from their table and get into line. And so, again, it doesn't matter when you show up. You could actually show up at 5:15, it would not incentivize you to get there early. And so that was to dissuade so many people from perhaps congregating outside. We allow them to bring all their stuff inside, so we don't allow them to use their bikes outside, or we don't encourage them to leave their bikes outside, but to bring them inside and to have all their goods inside so that the street may be unobstructed and usable. We allow them to use our restrooms. Those are open the entire time. And we collect all trash and pay to dispose of it. So we collect trash inside and out and dispose of it. I think that's it. I'm running short on time. I will distribute this list of meals in Everett. It may not be the most up-to-date, but it's the one that I have. And in contrast, I want to, this will be my last comment, the Everett meals list is, and I apologize again for it being a bad copy, it's the one I received, it's one sheet. Seattle's is 15 pages. So there has been an assumption that we are overserved, and I think mathematically, not only to that be not correct, but when we look at other cities, here's Seattle, 15 pages of meals, and here we have in Everett. Now the data that this is based on is the population of Seattle being about 650,000, and they've got 15 pages. We have 103, and we've got 1. It's an interesting and stark contrast that speaks, I think, to the need in our city. Delighted to be here with you and serve, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, just one more round of applause for everybody. We didn't get a chance to park. Thank you, guys. Now, there was an awful lot of suggestions for improvement and ideas here, and a lot of stuff to go through. And so we have a chance now to ask folks some questions before we take our break. I'd like to go for at least 15 minutes, depending on how well you all are doing. And I'll start with you guys if you have some, otherwise I'll start asking questions. So, David's got a question.
John, you made reference to folks who are denied service for good reason at the mission. I know there are a number of people in the community who just aren't really able to live by the rules and take advantage of some of the service. What do we do with those folks? What should we do with those folks?
You know, that's I had a note there that I didn't talk about, so thank you for asking. So we do have a number of individuals that communal living and operating within a communal and a group environment is not within their capacity as individuals, given their mental condition, their physical state, whatever it may be, or just it can be lifestyle choices, but that's really, really low on the list of reasons why somebody wouldn't be served or no service at the mission. We find that to be a difficult challenge to find solutions for individuals that we're not able to help. Because if we're not able to help them, we're not sure where they go. There is no other, particularly for single men. Right? So if we're not able to provide those services, there's not a lot of other places, so they can receive some services and day center services at Compass Health. But oftentimes, if we've no service on them, they probably have two, or they have to have increased services around them to be able to have them in the facility. The standard of gravely disabled is you can't feed yourself. You're not taking care of your food, and you're going to starve yourself to death. That's a really, really high standard. And so we have individuals that, we have a phrase that my boss likes to use, and I love to steal her phrases all the time. She calls it creating the crisis. And so there are times when we will do that on purpose to force the rest of the community to try to address somebody that maybe we're all kind of bouncing around. But if we stop helping them, then we might be able to get services. But even still there, because the standard is so high, gravely disabled, I'm thinking of individuals in my head now that I know, we've trespassed and we don't allow on our property, or we've called the police multiple times, and the police, because they're not going to put them in jail, they're just going to put them in the car and take them down the block and drop them off. We don't enjoy that, but we're not able, if I let them stay, they think they can stay, and then it just becomes something that my residents who tend to run our facility have to manage, and it's not fair to ask our residents to manage individuals like that. I wish I had a better answer. I long for a better answer, and I think anybody in this that is in social service would communicate the same thing. They long for a better answer, a more compassionate response. Maybe it's some better access to adult living facilities that can manage more severe mental health issues that isn't to the standard of a mental health facility like some of the couple that we have in our community.
Thanks, John. So, Cassie, I'm hoping also, because I think that you could speak a little bit maybe to that question, because I think I heard you say that if the kids are problematic or have a criminal record, you can't take care of them. So, where would kids like that be able to go at all?
Yeah. So, is this on? Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to get close enough to it. There we go. So we do work with kids. There's a number of kids we can't house. We house about 250 kids a year in our emergency and transitional housing programs, but we case manage about 300 kids a year that we do not house, and we do street outreach, and we come in contact with about, 15,000? Or not 1,500? Thank you, Jen. I'm looking over at Jen. She knows our stats. 1,500 kids a year. And so what we do with those kids is we try to bring them into our day center. We try to begin case managing them. We have worked with kids that are living in vehicles, and we get them graduated out of high school. It takes intensive case management, and it takes extensive outreach programs, and there is very, very limited resources available for this work in this community.
Renee.
I'm Renee. I have a clothing store in Everett called Renee's, right next to the Journey Church. And one of my questions is, how long have you been providing meals? I heard Alan say they've been providing meals for, I believe he said 4 years plus?
12.
Okay. And Matthew, how long have you?
We started hosting the meal weekly September 2013.
Okay, so it's about a year. Okay, so the first time I've met you, being your next door neighbor, was at one of these meetings. Unfortunately, I haven't met you before this all brought us together. So, as a business owner, it's great to hear that you are willing to have a designated area to work from and work together from downtown, because we've had to call the police numerous times, and it's been difficult to conduct business with with what I've seen going on happening. So it's really good to hear your take on how you are helping others and why. And as a Christian, I value that very much. So the communication thing, we could really work on. It would be great to get together. Thank you for answering the question.
Glenn, and then Craig.
Sorry if I missed it and if it was brought up before, but, and we used this phrase a number of times, but would someone explain fully what wraparound services are?
Go for it, Cassie.
I'd say it's different in every system. I think it's that there's a lot of talk about providing housing for folks, and that's all they need. If we can just get these folks housed, and then they'll be off the street and everything's okay. The populations we are working with have such complex issues that they're dealing with. They have mental health issues, they have drug and alcohol issues, they have trauma. Our youth have trauma, our adults have trauma. Sometimes they have PTSD from being a veteran. There's all kinds of things going on. And developmentally, they're behind. They might have developmental disabilities. And so wraparound, it is having all of those services available. We use it kind of freely. That's not the clinical definition of wraparound services, looks very different. But how we've been using it today, I believe that's what the other service providers are talking about.
Anybody want to add to that?
Service-rich programming.
Other service providers want to add to that or confirm that?
I guess I'll add, when we use the phrase wraparound services, we're speaking of trying to address the multiplicity of issues presented in an individual's life, and not just one professional dealing with their mental health here and another professional dealing with their chemical dependency here and another professional dealing with their housing and another dealing with relationships, but really trying to wrap around that individual in such a way that there's a coordinated effort to care for those individuals. It often includes outside of agencies support services, not necessarily in the agency. That is, the individual isn't necessarily coming to the agency to get the service, but the individuals doing the wraparound services are going to the individual, either in their place of residence, on the streets, wherever they're at, where they can be found, where we can help them. I just want to reiterate what Cassie said. So housing is a part of the solution. It's not the solution. So housing is important. But mental health is important, and stable, safe, trusting relationships is important. In fact, those are the things that are going to ensure stable, long-term housing.
Thank you, John. Craig.
I have a question for Pastor Savage. In 2006, the city of Everett created a process where we came up with a downtown plan. It was a very broad, community-based plan where we set the vision for what downtown Everett would look like 20, 30 years from now. And part of that plan designated certain streets as retail streets. Colby Avenue is one, Hewitt Avenue is another, and it set in place certain restrictions on uses, which included service agencies, food banks, and churches. And your church is unique in that it was grandfathered in for that use, but only recently did you start doing a food program on the main retail street. So I guess my question to you is, did you take into consideration the community's plan and the community's vision and zoning before you implemented that service, which is obviously a conflict for retail? If you go to downtown Seattle, you don't see a church next to Nordstrom's doing a food program. And if you go to Alderwood Mall, you're not going to see that kind of service being offered there for the same reasons. So that's my question to you, is did the church take that into consideration?
I was uninformed of the city's plan from 2006 before we got into that facility. I would also have some differences with that plan, disagreements. I understand that it's in place, and I also believe that the consequences of us serving hungry people food are overblown for serving a meal for 1 hour on a Saturday. And I speculate that the quality of life has not diminished, but if you were to ask most residents in Central and North Everett, that the quality of life has not diminished significantly in the last year since we started. The meal had existed before we started hosting it. It was being held on California Avenue at California and Rockefeller, I believe, somewhere over by the Y in a parking lot. And it was there for off and on for the last several years. And before that, it was at Praise Chapel on California. So the meal has literally just moved 3 blocks, 4 blocks in the last year, and has been in the city since, I believe, this particular meal since 2002. So it has a long-running presence in the community.
I had, did you have another question, Craig? Now I'm less confused. I had a question for Alan and Matthew. I was really interested to hear you say that you were open to partnerships and wanting to be able to continue each of your individuals' churches' missions should the question of co-location be pursued. And I think, Alan, you spoke to the idea that it was nevertheless very important to you to be downtown with those facilities. Can you say a little more about why that is important to you? And maybe, Matthew, you have the similar perspective, and just share some of your thoughts there.
Well, the church that I serve, so I think just, Renee, just to let you know, I've been here 4.5 years, so that was probably our Dinner at the Bell ministry has been going on for 12. The First Presbyterian Church of Everett has been on the corner of Rockefeller and Wall since 1910. So the church has a long-standing history. In fact, a lot of our older members would say that the town grew up around the church. You know, I don't know if that's true or not. You know, churches have myth and legend just as much as any other agency. So our church is uniquely downtown. It's been there, at least the sanctuary from 1910. So part of our identity is bound to the success and the care of downtown. So I would say that our ministry, whether it's Dinner at the Bell, whether it's allowing NAMI to hold basics classes, whether it's host NA meetings or other uses of our facilities. We had ECAP holding a training in our facility this morning. We see ourselves as a resource, and so that's a unique downtown Everett position in place. And so I think to move things away from that would lose part of what we see as our identity, I guess. And I guess you know, I want to just be public and say that I'm grateful for Matthew and for Journey Church. I think we're all here because there's a lot of issues in our community. But I'm grateful that Journey Church, I believe, really was like a catalyst for this group. And I'm very grateful for that. So thank you, Matthew.
Part of my concerns about moving the meal to a centralized location, thank you, by the way, is having the attenders be able to reach it. So if it was moved too far out of the city, these people dwell here, and so they often don't have transportation, either the funds for public or their own vehicle. And so I would want to make sure that they would still have access to the meals. That's very important. And anytime we combine something, or let's say even a government, local or federal, gets behind something, they tend to secularize it. And for a church, obviously, that's not acceptable to us, because we're not going to be bashful that we do this in the name of Christ and from a faithful heart. So those would be two concerns. Now, if there was a more centralized location in downtown, to which, you know, I'm not married to Colby and Hewitt in the sense that it has to be on those streets, but I would want it to be in the downtown area so that it would be accessible, and I would want the churches to be able to continue to contribute their identity and their message to the meals. That's absolutely imperative, in my opinion.
Thank you very much. That's helpful for me. I'm sorry, Tina, yeah.
I just wanted to say to Glenn that one of the things that I heard Cassie and John talk about wraparound services, we often call it client-centered. So and I think it's important to acknowledge, because not everybody, we don't have cookie cutter treatment and things. So it's really looking at, you know, meeting with that person and helping identify what it is that they specifically need. It could be 10 things or 2, And that's, being that client-centered piece is really helpful. And then, it's just kind of like if you are blessed enough to have family and some tragedy happens, you have family who comes and wraps themselves around you to cook you meals and provide things for you while you get through that hump. We become that family for folks. And I think having businesses like yourself and where you represent is really magical in that. I just really wanted to also say to the church members that are here, I think, as I've been in social work for 30 years, and we've often, and I'm a part of a big church, and my friend's the pastor at Refuge Church, also downtown, and is we often complain that, the churches are the most underused buildings, and where are they helping? And so when they're helping, where it's often the hardest people to help, I certainly hope that you feel community support and still respect the fact that church is a business, right? And so, your business is affected by the woes of this issue as well. And as a community, how do we pull together to look at people with compassion and still be able to have good business so that I'm going to walk into Renee's and spend my money, right? And we want that to happen. So I'm really looking forward to the solution part, Sylvia, where we talk about how we can come together to make that happen. Because I think it's really doable, and I think it's going to make Everett be one of the most beautiful cities in the nation.
I like that positive thought. Okay, our last two questions in the interest of time. Mark and then Bob. Okay, you're going to, all right, thank you. Bob.
A quick comment and then a question. Obviously, there's some major concerns, and we're here today because of what we have seen downtown and some of the problems that have been created. But if we focus on just solving that problem, we'll be putting Band-Aids on a very, very large issue in our community. And so it just, I think something we should keep in mind. Cassie, you mentioned the percentage of homeless who are under the age 24. Does anyone have any numbers for the percent of adult homeless who were chronically homeless as youth? Or if the answer is no, then can we get that for next time?
We can keep looking. In preparing for our presentation, we tried to find, it is incredibly difficult to get accurate statistics on homelessness, but we can look into that further and see if we can find anything, and if we do, we'll certainly
If we're
send
talking
it on.
about root causes and going back to where problems are, there may be places that need to be focused on more than others. Thank you.
I have one statistic, I don't know if it's helpful, but 50% of foster children in Washington State who age out of the system, meaning they're not reconciled to their families, they have nowhere to go, become homeless. 50% become homeless for in a very long, typically, period of time. And they also have about a 1 in 2 chance of becoming incarcerated. And so that changes the way, I don't know about you, but for me, that changes the way that I often view the homeless, is knowing that these were kids that never had a chance in a very real sense. 50% of the foster kids aging out. So that's just one stat. It's probably not the one you're looking for, but I believe it to be significant.
And I just want to speak to that real quick. I absolutely agree, and the foster care kids do have good statistics. The non-state dependent kids, the statistics are a lot harder to find, but the kids that are street dependent or in our long-term housing programs, the outcomes 100% align with foster care kids.
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. First, the question was, in Cassie's presentation, she said children are individuals 18 and older and under 25, their only source of housing was the gospel mission. And I was just curious if you have numbers on how many individuals, say 18 to 21 and then 21 to 25, are actually housed in the gospel mission system.
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I'm sure we can get them. I've got them. I just don't have those numbers on the top of my head.
All right.
Sorry.
We do drop off kids there.
Sorry?
We do drop off kids there at times.
Okay, I was curious what the number was. And as Sylvia and John know, I'm somewhat of a neighbor and have been in the neighborhood for 30 years. And over that 30 years, there's been ongoing crime of every kind of consequence you can understand. aid cars all the time in the neighborhood. It's just been an ongoing situation. A lot of the direct sight we see during the day has actually increased since the city put that sidewalk in that he mentioned. But having said that, lately my attitude has changed relative to the gospel mission. I used to blame most everything on them. But I truly believe, especially when you listen to the number of people that are housed in that facility, and you don't see those people during the day. You see 10, 20, or 30 out on the sidewalk or roaming the streets, generally speaking. So it's my assumption of the people that you see, it's a very small minority and most likely not even related to the gospel mission that are causing the problems. But I want to make two comments, and John already knows about one, which is one morning I was driving near the gospel mission, but several blocks away, and I saw a guy with a garbage can with gloves on picking up garbage. And this was out of sight of the gospel mission, and I took a picture of him and asked him if by any chance that was one of their people, and he said it was. And I said, well, I really appreciate it because the neighborhood looks a lot better now than it has in years past. I mean, years past you would see thousands of beer bottles and stuff in certain parts, and you don't see that anymore. So that I'm telling because I appreciate what they have done. On the other hand, last week I was at Taco Time going down 37th to my office on Smith, and I was following a bicycle, and I kept seeing this orange thing, and I'm thinking, what is this guy carrying? And as I passed him, as we came up to Broadway, I realized he was carrying a chainsaw. And I followed the bike through the stoplight. He went around the old CED building and pulled up underneath the bridge where they hang out on the sidewalk. He circled there for a while and then went up the street and turned down the alley next to the gospel mission. Now, I'm not saying anything about him going in the gospel mission with the chainsaw. It's just that unfortunately that bridge and that street and that sidewalk attract a certain part of the clientele that is the problem for all of us. I think 90% of the homeless people are not the problem. It's 10% that are the criminals that are creating all the problems for most of us. So I just want to...
Thank you. Can I just comment on the gentleman cleaning up around? I'll be quick. So that's a gentleman that sleeps on Ebby Island, walks to the mission every morning, and then walks back there to his campsite because he doesn't stay at the mission right now. And it provides him purpose and significance. So if we're looking for solutions, purpose and significance for individuals that have never had it in their life, and if we're talking about men, they must have it, is a really important element of thinking about how do we provide purpose and significance to individuals that don't have it. And he has it. The other individual, I think that's another element why outreach is important, is because that individual might not be coming in the building, might not be allowed to come in the building. I didn't have a chainsaw massacre. But doing outreach outside the building and trying to build that relationship would be an important element, too, of trying to bring him into the system to be able to help.
I want to make sure I was not insinuating he was going there. It's just that does exist in that neighborhood.
And it would get your attention, people with chainsaws roaming around downtown.
Follow
So
them, please.
before we do the break, right now, I believe Alan and Cassie and Chief Templeman and Tom Sebastian have agreed to be working on a subcommittee to dive a little deeper into the issues we've been talking about for the last hour or so. Is there anybody else that would like to join them? I'm thinking in particular about people who maybe are not in the service provider community that would be interested in participating in at least a meeting between now and October 2nd with this group to talk about some solutions. Craig, you're a prince among men. Thank you. You are on the list now, and Wendy will be calling you guys together. Is there anyone else that would like to join them? Thank you, Marilyn. Okay. I think that's probably enough for a group. I want to thank everybody that was on the panel for sharing your thoughts and putting together some really good information for the folks. We are way over time, of course, so the break is going to be fast. We are going to start, you got an 8-minute break today, sorry guys, and we're going to start at 5, and that means we're already a good 10 minutes shy on the next panel. Note to self for your presenter. And on your way in the next 8 minutes, feel free to sign up for a tour. If you haven't already gone on a field trip, we still got the 4. Wendy's got the sheets at the back table. We will start again and go up in 8 minutes. Thank you.